It's a deal worth billions of dollars. It would settle more than 2,000 lawsuits from cities, counties, hospitals, Indian tribes, and Native American tribes and other groups across the country. But is it enough? That is the question being asked today after Purdue Pharma, the maker of the opioid drug OxyContin, reached a tentative settlement to pay out $3 billion over 7 years to end the litigation that accused the company and the family that owned it of fueling the opioid epidemic in the United States. And make no mistake, this is an urgent crisis. More than 700,000 Americans have died since 1999 from opioids. These addictive drugs have ravaged communities indiscriminately from coast to coast. So, are billions of dollars in a payout and the family behind it losing control of the company, is it enough? Joining me right now is Paul Hanly. He's one of the lead attorneys who's representing the plaintiffs in this lawsuit. Thank you so much for being here, Ms. Hanly. Mr. Hanly, I've got a million questions, of course. This is a tentative deal. All the reporting is that this is a tentative deal right now. What can you tell us about how close this is to final?
Well, the executive committee of the plaintiffs group in the federal proceedings is recommending the deal based on the general terms that have been put out there. As you correctly mentioned, Kate, the $3 billion guaranteed, the Sacklers essentially losing total control and ownership of all of the pharmaceutical companies, both worldwide and in the United States. So we have to paper the deal, as we say, and we have to make sure that all of the bells and whistles are on it. But at this point, our constituency, which is more than 2,000 communities, is recommending that we take a harder look and that we not break off the talks.
Do your constituencies, do the plaintiffs, do you consider this a win? Are you happy with the settlement?
Well, you know, it's often said that the perfect is the enemy of the good. This is not a perfect settlement, Kate. But it is a good settlement in our judgment, because the alternative is that Purdue Pharma goes into bankruptcy court, and those proceedings, as you know, can last a decade or more. The lawyers who work with me in this litigation have vast experience in bankruptcy proceedings, and we don't believe it's in the interests of these communities, which, as you indicated, are hemorrhaging funds and in need of funds, to wait 10 or 15 years for what would likely be a smaller payout than could be achieved now.
Not everyone is happy with this outcome. As you said, you're not necessarily thinking this is a perfect deal as it is. But here is how the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, his reaction to this tentative settlement was. This apparent settlement is a slap in the face to everyone who has had to bury a loved one due to this family's destruction and greed. It allows the Sackler family to walk away billionaires and admit no wrongdoing. What do you say to that?
Well, again, it's not a perfect settlement, but I believe that it's in the interests of the residents, the citizens of Pennsylvania, to have a deal in this framework be approved. And we recognize that the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, like many of the other men and women who serve in that role around the country, have been upset with the Sacklers and with Purdue. But again, we have to look to the communities that are in need of funds to abate this epidemic. And I'm hopeful that the Attorney General of Pennsylvania and the others who, as you know, have objected, will listen to sound arguments. And hopefully, if we can sweeten the deal, they will come around.
One of the things I saw about this deal is some of the reporting is that part of the payout that will go to these communities comes from the future sale of OxyContin. If OxyContin is the root of the problem, how is that helping the problem?
Well, it's not necessarily the case that the future payout would come from sales of OxyContin. Okay. The company could be sold, liquidated, the assets sold off, and those revenues could flow to the communities without the communities accepting funds from the sale of OxyContin. So that's still very much up in the air, and we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Do you agree that seems completely backwards?
It does seem somewhat inappropriate for a community that's been suing the company over the marketing of OxyContin to then be accepting revenues from those sales. But we will look to the bankruptcy court and to the advisors concerning how this can be structured.
What do you think of these additional lawsuits? Pennsylvania's Attorney General, he just announced today that they're going to move forward with suing specific members of the Sackler family. What do you think of that approach?
Well, that's been done. This is not novel. This has been done over the last year or so. In fact, a number of the communities that I represent, including the city of New York, have sued the Sacklers personally. It's part of a litigation strategy. But again, we are looking at this point in time for a slightly different approach, namely some sort of a deal that would get money to these communities more quickly than going through the long years, decades possibly, of bankruptcy.
We will be watching as this proceeds very closely. I'm very interested in it. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, Mr. Hanly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.